Come join us as we dive into the greatest sermon ever preached, the Sermon on the Mount, and learn with us how we can follow the call of our great shepherd, Jesus Christ.
Many of you have had the opportunity in life to watch a courtroom drama, or maybe you've even been in court yourself. I know at least one person who's definitely been in court themselves. Dave, if I say anything wrong about this, I'm sorry. You can correct me later, or stand up if it's bad enough. But when you go to court, and if you're watching a show or you're there in person, and a witness is called, what happens? What do they need to do?
Raise your right hand, put your left hand
There you go. Exactly. They're sworn in. A Bible's taken out. They put their hand on their Bible and they say, repeat after me. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? And they're sworn in by that. Now, have you ever just stopped for a moment seeing that and wonder, why in the world do people get sworn in like that? What is the purpose? Well, the purpose is because the assumption is without swearing in, you're going to be free to lie. We just assume people are going to lie, and so swearing is needed. And the truth is, we probably know this, you probably have felt this or experienced this, but we live in a world surrounded by liars. In fact, our world is a world of liars. We see lying all over the place. You turn on your TV, you turn on your phone, anywhere you go, there's lying. It's all around us. Terrible, terrible world. But of course, let's be fair, that's to be expected. That is the world. The problem isn't that we live in a world of liars. The problem is when we see that dishonesty out in the world here with us and in our own hearts. And that's a danger for us, because this can be it can be just as true for us, that we can allow dishonesty to seep in. We can allow dishonesty in our hearts. We can allow dishonesty to get through. Just being in the world, it's almost like reverse osmosis for any of you who do any sugaring and have those fancy devices. I was watching a show on it, actually, just this past week. It was on water purification, but they were using reverse osmosis. And with enough pressure against a filter, the water is pressed through. And it can be like that. We live in a world with a lot of lies, and with enough pressure, that dishonesty just comes into us as well. And so I would ask you this question. You fishermen out there, how big was that fish really? Was it really this big? Again, Dave, I saw yours. Yours really was that big. But in general, is it really that big? When you're going through a problem, is it really how you explain it? When you give numbers, are they maybe added to a little bit or maybe subtracted a little bit? Do you do a little creative rounding when you tell something? Everything from embellishing to white lies to straight up lies, we find ourselves involved in that all the time. To be honest, just being transparent here, I was writing emails this week, and as I was typing them out, I was thinking to myself, wait, is the story I'm telling or what I'm relaying exactly true, or am I shaving the edges a little bit? And as I'm typing, I'm like, backspace, I can't do that. I'm preaching on this week. I gotta tell the truth. And you catch yourself like that. It's so easy. There is this pervasive dishonesty. But that is not the way of Jesus. That is not the way of the kingdom of God. What we are called to as kingdom people is what we'll call today radical honesty. That is what we are called to as the people of God in this place. Now, radical, I love that word. It has to do with the idea of going to the root, the very core of something. If we were radically honest, it would simply be true that what you see from us, what you hear from us is what you get, because it's true. Not just don't lie, but that we would be honest in all we say. Not brutally honest, meaning you have to tell every truth about a person even when it's an unfriendly one, but radically honest, meaning what we say is true, and we do what we say we're going to do. That's what we find in our text today that we're going through. That's what Jesus is teaching about. So if you're not there yet, take up your Bibles, open it with me. Matthew chapter 5, verses 33 through 37. Again, Matthew chapter 5, verses 33 through 37, as we see Jesus moving on to his next command. So we've been following along in the Sermon on the Mount. We're in that section where Jesus is giving the commands. He is saying things like, you've heard it said, and then he'll list off a law that's been taken at a very surface level by the world. And then he'll say, but I say to you, and he dives in deeper to look, what is the purpose of this law? What is the reason behind it? What does a kingdom person look like if they're truly living like a kingdom person? Jesus is holding up this view of the righteousness that is greater than the Pharisees. And so now he gets to the question, what about the truth? How are kingdom people to approach the truth? And so this morning what we're going to see is first, as he addresses it, what does it look like to be living in lies? How does the world function? And then we're going to look at what it looks like as a kingdom person to be living in truth. So the two areas we're addressing today, living in lies and living in truth. So starting here, right with what Jesus has for us at the very beginning, Matthew chapter 5, verse 33, living in lies. What does it mean to be living in a world of lies? Let's read what Jesus says here again. He says, again, you have heard that it was said of old, you shall not swear falsely, but shall perform to the Lord what you have sworn. Now, you read that sounds pretty good, right? It sounds it sounds right. It sounds like, hey, it's a command from God. What you say you need to do. How in the world could Jesus need to correct that? How in the world could Jesus need to step in and say, but I say to you about this one? Well, the truth is, what we find is that the people were using this rule in order to be dishonest. It's crazy how that works, but that's how the world works. That's how the world perverts things, and that's what happened with this command. So let's take a look a little bit at this command and where Jesus is actually quoting it from. So if we take a look at the passage, we can go back and see that it was just a common understanding in the Old Testament. We have Leviticus 19:12. In Leviticus 19:12, an early statement about truth, about swearing, the Lord says, you shall not swear by my name falsely, and so profane the name of your God. I am the Lord. So Jesus is addressing the idea, or the Lord is addressing the ideal of swearing to the people of Israel. And he's telling them, no, if you swear something by my name, you have to keep it. That's what Jesus is quoting. That is what Jesus is talking about. And if we go on a little bit further, we actually see that Jesus commands that God commands that you go ahead and swear in his name. So he commands about swearing in the Old Testament. We read in Deuteronomy 6:13, it is the Lord your God you shall fear, him you shall serve, and by his name you shall swear. And again, Deuteronomy 10, verse 20, you shall fear the Lord your God, you shall serve him and hold fast to him, and by his name you shall swear. All right, seems good so far. We're going through this law, this understanding. God has said, okay, you swear by my name, and if you swear by my name, you keep it. And even beyond that, not only is he commanding it, but God himself steps in and swears by himself. We see in Genesis chapter 22, 15 through 18. Well, this is where we have Abraham, having just took his son up the mountain and was prepared to sacrifice his son. And the angel of the Lord comes down, and God speaks to Abraham, and he says, by myself I have sworn, declares the Lord, because you have done this and not withheld your son, your only son, blessing is coming. But God swears by himself. Even God swears here to keep the truth, to go ahead and do what he says he's going to do. We see a rule out of this, a rule out of the Old Testament. The rule is this: if you're going to swear, you had better keep your word. But Jesus calls this into question. Why does Jesus call this into question? Well, I'd ask, why is this command here? Why does the command exist? It exists to protect us in a world of lies. But here's the issue with it. Shouldn't you always tell the truth? Shouldn't you always do what you say you're going to do? If we break it down, look at 33. Think about it for a moment here as we take a look at this text. When Jesus quotes it, and he's quoting right out of the Old Testament, he quotes it, you shall not swear falsely, but shall perform to the Lord what you have sworn. There's two ways of reading that. There's the godly way of reading that says this: hey, I do what I say I'm going to do. I stand on my promises, and I stand by the oaths I make to the Lord. But there's a really worldly way of reading this as well. That worldly way of reading that is this. Well, hey, as long as if I say the right words, I got to keep it, but that's the only thing I need to keep. Anything else, I can go ahead and fudge on the truth. Anything else, depending on how serious it is, I don't need to keep my word. That is the world's way of reading this. I have an exception. I have an exception to telling the truth or to keeping the truth. And by the time we get to Jesus' day, it had gotten a little crazy. When we approach it where Jesus is now, there were already these long formulations about what words you could use to bind you to the truth. The closer you got to the name of the Lord, the more truthful you had to be. If you claim by the Lord something, well, you better do it and you better keep the truth. And if you claim by the temple, well, you probably should. And maybe you claim by Jerusalem you're going to do something. Well, maybe. And you claim by yourself. Well, now you got a lot of wiggle room. There's a lot of wiggle room. You don't need to worry as much about truth there. You're claiming by yourself. Well, Jesus, he's jumping into the middle of these patterns, these sinful patterns that were there in the first century. He even addresses it directly in Matthew 23, verses 16 and 17. He's dealing with the Pharisees now. And they're coming before him, challenging him, so he returns the challenge and says to them, "Woe to you, blind guides, who say, if anyone swears by the temple, it is nothing." In other words, you don't need to keep what you said you're going to do. But if anyone swears by the gold of the temple, since it's being offered up to God, he is bound by his oath. Well, look at that, a way out of your promises, a way of not telling the truth. Jesus goes on to say, "For which is greater, the gold or the temple that has made the gold sacred?" See, Jesus is seeing these people are playing with truth. They're playing a game with truth and trying to get around what the Lord says. And just a little bit later, he makes it really clear to them and a little bit harsh here. He says to them, "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites!" That's an important word. A hypocrite, a word for an actor, somebody who puts on a face and says one thing, but is another person underneath. They're liars. "For you tithe mint and dill and cumin, and you have neglected the weightier matters of the law, justice and mercy and faithfulness. These you ought to have done without neglecting the others. You blind guides, straining at a gnat and swallowing a camel." Yeah, Jesus sees the truth here. They're swallowing the camel. What camel? They were keeping so religiously to the text of the law, to the very letters, that they missed the whole point. They were missing the point of the law, moving them towards truthfulness. Instead, they were using the law to be comfortable with lying. Now, of course, in our day and age, we might not say buy the temple or buy the gold of the temple, but you know some of those ones that we can use ourselves. First off, I promise I'll do that. Or maybe I swear to do that. Or maybe, especially for the young ones, I cross my heart and hope to die. But I cross my fingers so I'm safe. See, I don't have to keep it. We have those ideas ourselves. Now, the truth is we might not actually use those to verify truth. Maybe we're mature enough. We don't need to cross our hearts and hope to die for people to take us serious. But I think we do the same thing when we rate certain lies a little okay to tell. One lie might be a little white lie is okay, but maybe a slightly stronger lie shouldn't be, and then the big lie isn't. But I'm okay with the white lie. I'm okay with the embellishment. I'm okay with breaking a small promise. I'll keep the big ones. We're just arranging it the same way they did. What truth do we need to keep? How honest do we need to be? So the issue with the law comes down to this. The need to swear assumes that normal conversation is going to be a lie. The need to swear assumes that there's a lie out there. It was designed as a law to keep the world in check, but the kingdom person should be different. See, this was given for the same reasons I would say that the certificate of divorce was given. We covered last week. That is, divorce was already happening, so certificate was applied and God gave some boundaries to it. Lying was already happening, and so God gave boundaries to it so you could have faith that someone was telling you the truth even in a world of lying. Swearing was the only way to confirm the truth in the world. But in the kingdom, you should be able to trust that truth is being spoken. Even God made oaths, but that just showed you what the world is like. It was a concession to lying man so that they might know his seriousness, because oaths are needed in a world of lying. Now, it was true back then, in Jesus' day, and it's true for us as well. So, why do we swear now? Why do we confirm what we are saying is true? Well, nothing's different. We don't live in a world full of truthfulness, truth-telling. We live in a world of lies, yes. Even in my family, told the story about my family, love my family, Christian family, grew up in the church. But if we had to tell the truth, you had to say, on our love, that is true. We would swear on our very love. That's what on our love means, on our love. I swear on my love for you that what I say is true. To this day, I have to dance that one a little carefully to get out of that. But we say that we have those things because we live in a world of lies. And again, we think about it. You have the internet, you can go on, you can see all sorts of lies. You have your phone, plenty of lies there. We live in an era of what's called social and sexual revolution, where we are expected to lie. At times we are even required, at least they try to require us to lie about what the Bible calls sin. Oh yeah, the Bible calls things sin, and yet the world doesn't accept that and sometimes calls on us to lie. We're called to lie on about a person's gender. We sadly know that's a thing nowadays, a person's pronouns. We're called to lie, required to lie in some circumstances in order to, keep a job or keep working. And we see those things, and it would be so easy to spend time just bashing the world about it. Bad, bad world, so terrible. But that's not the point. That's no surprise. Satan rules out there. That should be a world of lies, but we shouldn't find it here. And so the question for you as we approach this text is this: are you being honest yourself? Are you being honest? Are you keeping your word and sticking to the truth even when it hurts? Are you being honest? So something we can do right now as we think on this is identify the lie. Where have you been dishonest this past week? I'm going to trust that most of us has probably found a little dishonesty at some point in this past week. Sometime where maybe I fudged a number, did a little bit, whatever it may be. Yeah, even if it was a white lie, that we were a little dishonest. Well, this is a chance for you. You want to write one down? I got a spot for it right there so everyone can see. Again, a little confessional there on the notes for you to get that out there. But where have you been dishonest recently? Because that's not what we're called to. Did God create the world for oaths and for swearing? No. Those are there because of the untrustworthiness that's out there now. And as we saw, God even swears himself because people are so used to everyone lying to them. But that's not how it's supposed to be in the kingdom. We live in a world of lies, yes, that's true. But we are called to be kingdom people. So how should we live? What does Jesus say about that? Well, that's what we find as we continue to see what it means to be living in the truth. So we find this here, verse 34 through 36. Let's take a look at what Jesus says here. Because Jesus, responding to what they've heard, says this: I say to you, do not take an oath at all, either by heaven, for it is the throne of God, or by the earth, for it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. And do not take an oath by your head, for you cannot make one hair black or white. That's God's expectation. That's what Jesus calls us to right there. You can see he's confronting their ideal of formulations of how you're supposed to swear and how binding it is. He goes down the list of them. Now, I find this one pretty amazing as we take a look at what he's saying as he confronts this. These are their formulas, but the question behind the formula was this: how close are you to God? Because the further you are from God, the more untrustworthy you could be. The further you are from God, the less you had to tell the truth, the less you had to keep to your word. Jesus' challenge here is, well, don't swear. Why? Because God is present in all of this. God is present everywhere. Now, this is a convicting one for me to walk through, to think about and remember this, that God is everywhere. He knows the truth of who you are when you're by yourself. He knows the truth of who you are when you're with other people. He knows the truth of how you act in every situation. He is there for all of it. And so, how are you when you're with other people? How are you by yourself? How are you when you're, let's say, out in the public around other people? How are you when you are with your friends hanging out? How are you when you're just out on the town? Or how are you even when you are alone? Are you a different person in these different circumstances? See, we are called to be truthful, letting our yes be yes or no be no, not be swearing, and all the rest. But that means we're to be the same person, to have the same integrity wherever we are. Are you the same person by yourself? Do you have the same integrity when no one's looking as you do when you're out in front of people or with certain groups of people? Are you? Now, I'm not saying you got to have the same personality, but the same integrity there. Do you adjust the truth with different people? Because God is there regardless. God is always there regardless. And if that doesn't affect you, if it does not affect you even when you're by yourself to remember God is with you, well, then you may just have more fear in man than in God. And that's not what we're called to have. We are called to fear God more than man. We are called to fear the one who can destroy soul and body, not just the one who can destroy body. No. What we are called to is radical honesty. And it is incredibly simple how Jesus puts this down for us. Verse 37, we read this. Let what you say be simply yes or no. Anything more than this comes from evil. How simple is that? When he finally breaks it down, let your yes be yes and your no be no. That's it. Say what is true and keep what you say. It is so simple, and yet it can be so hard for us. It can be so hard. I mean, think about it. It's lumped in here with divorce, and it's lumped in here with lust, and with anger and retaliation. Something so simple, and yet so challenging. Speak the truth and be honest. What if the you that we saw, the person that we get to see, is true, is the real you, that you are truthful in what you do? What if everything you said is true? What if every way you acted was true to what you said you were going to do? What would that do to your life? I had an example of this from my time in Chicago. When I was going to school there in Chicago at Moody Bible Institute, we were told, and it was true, every business in the area tried to get a Moody Bible Institute student to work for them. They came to the school. They recruited people. They wanted us to work for them. Why? Because they knew they could trust us. Because we were honest. Because when we figured the money in the register, they would not be missing anything at the end of the night. We wouldn't show up in the morning drunk or with a hangover, unable to work, 30 minutes late. We were true to what we said, and it was trusted. You get a Moody student, they are a good worker. Now, that's a great testimony. I don't know how true it always was, but what a witness. See, if we lived like this, being truthful in all things, well, I think people would notice. I think people would notice that. Because what is one of the biggest complaints against Christians? Oh, those Christians are just a whole bunch of, anyone? Hypocrites. Oh, those Christians, what a bunch of hypocrites. Now, where does that come from? Now, we might want to say, oh, that's a blindness of the world. They just don't understand. They don't get it. Honestly, though, I think it comes a little more from the fact that there are times we don't keep our word. There are times we don't follow through. There's times that we actually look like the world. There's times where when we're out there by ourselves, we're not acting like kingdom people that we are called to be. We say we follow Jesus, but we don't act like him. We're unloving. We're unhelpful. We call people out for their sins. Well, we downplay our own. We act different and talk different depending on who we are around. And because of that, when we do that, that gets the charge of hypocrite. And that's a proper charge. But that radical honesty, simply being truthful about who we are and what we are going to do, if we had that reputation, I do believe that people would be attracted here, attracted to us, because it is different than the world that'll say whatever it needs to say and do whatever it needs to do, regardless of truthfulness, to continue on. So I've done something to practice this in my own life, because I come up with this issue too. Like, Mike, are you being truthful? Are you truly being honest? Now, this is very annoying, I understand, but I'll give it to you as possibly a practice as well. So a common thing we do as humans is when we greet somebody, we say, "Oh, how's it going?" Now, when we say, "How's it going?" really, what does that mean? That means, "Oh, hi," and the proper response is what? If I ask you, "How's it going?" what do you say? Good, that's it. I don't want to know more. I don't want to hear more. Great, you're good. Okay, so this is where I get annoying, but it is a practice of truthfulness. When somebody asks me, "How's it going?" I try to answer truthfully. Maybe not long. Thankfully, you guys know I'm not long-winded, so I keep it short. But I try and answer truthfully. If they ask me, "How's it going?" if it's bad, I try and say, "Oh, actually, it's pretty rough right now," or "It's crazy right now," or "I have no idea what day it is, and the kids are going crazy." I try to be truthful. Now, I might actually challenge you to try that. I know it's a little hard, it goes against the cultural norms, but when we get into the habit of lying, that just stays there. When our habit is to throw up little white lies like, "Hey, I'm doing good," when really I'm crushed inside. Really, I feel terrible. Really, I couldn't sleep last night. Really, my family's having issues. Well, when we get into that habit of lying, it spreads elsewhere as well. Remember, sin doesn't just stay in one place. It likes to spread throughout. And if we practice lying every day with something as simple as that, it'll find other areas of our life to infect. It'll go other places. No, we are called to be honest because kingdom people are honest in what we say and in what we do. All right, 2 challenges to that to cover before we wrap up. All right, first challenge is this that you often hear when we talk about honesty, and this text is challenged for this. What about when you need to swear? All right, what about when you are required to make an oath? Some of us have had to make oaths before, whether to an organization or in court. Oaths are required, and so what happens when you need to make an oath? Now, people do differ on this and their understanding, but honestly, I just take Jesus at his word. He says here, "Don't swear." I don't believe we should swear. I don't believe that we should take oaths like that, simply because that is what Jesus says, and I do take him at his word there. Now, what I find interesting is Jesus' response to that, because Jesus was at trial as well, and it's an interesting study to look at. How did Jesus respond when he was in the trial? So I pulled up a verse here. Let's see if I have it up on the slide so you don't have to turn all the way to it. Let's see here. Oh, there it is, Matthew 26. So Jesus is taken around to trial after trial. And in the midst of this, they ask him a lot of questions. And we have times where Jesus answers questions, but you'll notice something that's missing. Jesus never swears. He never takes an oath that what he says is true. He answers some questions. But there's this one time in Matthew where he doesn't swear, but someone else swears him in. We get this here, again, verse 62. "And the high priest stood up and said, 'Have you no answer to make? What is it that these men testify against you?' But Jesus remained silent." And then we get this. "The high priest said to him, 'I adjure you by the living God, tell us if you are the Christ, the Son of God.'" All right, that means the high priest put him under oath. Jesus is now under oath to speak and answer the question, and he says, "Are you the Christ, the Son of God?" Now, elsewhere, Jesus might answer, "I am he." But in this case, under oath, how does Jesus respond? "You have said so." He doesn't answer the question. He turns the question around. "But I tell you, from now on, you will see the Son of Man seated on the right hand of power and coming on the clouds of heaven." Jesus avoids that. Now, that amazes me. It's like Jesus is putting into application what he actually taught and doesn't stand under the oath, doesn't answer that way. Now, from that reading and my understanding, I don't think that I would feel uncomfortable ever swearing in under any circumstances. And I'll be honest, I have no plans of going to court. I have no plans of being a witness or a defendant or anything, and especially not a witness. So all y'all don't do that. I don't want to be taken to court for something or have to go and be a witness for something. But I've thought about that, and maybe you've thought about that. And my answer to that would be simple. I would affirm the truth. I would affirm that I'm a Christian who speaks the truth. But you know what? I wouldn't swear in. I would not take an oath because I stand by what Jesus says. And he says anything more than that is from evil. And so I'll stick with yes and I'll stick with no, as he told us. And I hope that would be a testimony. Now, thankfully, you don't have to worry about it in court. The Anabaptists cleared the way for that. So you're good to affirm rather than swear. But Remember that whenever you're called up for this. Now, there's another issue, because we're talking about truth. Then your yes be yes and your no be no. What about a situation where you need to lie? Now, this tends to be a little bit of a gotcha question. I've gotten this from people before. When I've said, oh, no, lying's wrong. Well, what about when you need to lie? And the situation always goes to the Holocaust or something like that. If you have Jews hiding, would you tell the Nazis? Would you be honest and tell the truth? Do you think Jesus is really telling you, tell the truth in every circumstance? To that I will say, well, we're not in the Holocaust. We're not there, so the application doesn't really fit for you or your understanding. And chances are you will never deal with something like that. So you're fine there. Don't worry. But, I take a stance on Jesus' word. Be truthful. That doesn't mean you got to speak everything that needs to be spoken. But when you find yourself, when you're asking these questions, the reality of them is this. They tend to be ways to give justification. Because you can think of an extreme example and say, well, if I were under that situation, of course I would lie to save somebody's life. Well, that quickly becomes, of course I would lie to save a relationship, which then becomes, of course I would lie to save my job, which then becomes, of course I would lie to save some money. Of course I would lie to really anything, because why not? Those tend to move in that progression. They don't tend to go the other way. And so I would say, no, let's just say no lying. Not at all. Let's just keep that out. And if the situation does come up, I would still give you my standard advice, which is this. Trust in Jesus and fear God before man. All right? Again, it's not for naught that he said, fear the one who can destroy soul and body. Don't fear the one who can simply destroy the body. So even a white lie, even a small lie, no, I say be honest. Not brutally honest again, but be honest. We live in a world where that's almost too much to swallow. That's almost too much to simply be honest, where we can say just about anything but the truth. So this is our opportunity to be different, to be honest, to be people of the kingdom. So, a thought for us as we close here and think about it. When it comes to honesty, where are you going to be truthful? You've heard it said by the world, maybe by your own lips, hey, I have this area right here I know I'm lying in. I know I'm dishonest about. But what does Jesus say about it? What is Jesus' word about this? Be truthful in what you say. If you have an area of your life where that might be the case, again, on your notes, there's a little spot to write it down, and you can say, hey, this is an area where I have been dishonest. But I know that Jesus says that I can trust him, that I can take this risk of trusting Jesus and being honest as he's called me to be honest, to let people know who I am, to let people know the truth, to walk in the truth and take that risk because Jesus has me. He actually is in control. I am in his hands and can trust him. And when I ask, how are you doing? How are you? How's it going? Feel free to tell me the answer. Be honest. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. As kingdom people living in this world of lies, we are meant to stand out. So let's be honest in all we do and in all we say. And to God be the glory with that. Lord God, I thank you for your goodness, that we have the opportunity to walk in truth, that we can stand up for truth and righteousness. Lord, I pray that we would be honest in all we do. May we be people who keep our word. May we be people who go out from this place and are different than what is out in the world because we can be truthful. Lord, may we be known by that. May we as a church here be known as people who tell the truth, who keep our word, and who can simply say yes or no, and it be trusted. God, do that work on us, I pray. This I lift up to you in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen.